A slow, faceless pan over a grand Georgian townhouse. Gaslight reflections on polished railings. An empty nursery window glowing faintly. No face on screen. Only a voice. Calm, low, and insistent. On a November night in 1974, a manicured London home became the scene of a violent, small-scale tragedy that turned into one of Britain's most enduring mysteries. A nanny was found dead. A duchess-like woman alleged an attacker. And one man, Lord Lucan, simply disappeared. The vanishing of Lord Lucan, 1974. Who was Lord Lucan? Richard John Bingham, the 7th Earl of Lucan, was an aristocrat of the old school. Polo, country houses, and placid dinner parties. He was also, by the early 1970s, a man under pressure. Reports of gambling debts, strained marriage, and a private life lived on the edge fed the tabloids and the whispering salons of London. Archival-style shots of a polo field, a snooker table, and an elegant townhouse doorway. Close-up, a leather-bound ledger being shut. Whether because of status or temperament, Lucan inhabited two worlds. The rarefied drawing rooms of the upper class and the murky back rooms of debt and desperation. That tension would become the lens through which the night of November 7th was viewed. The night that changed everything. In the small hours of November 7th, 1974, an attack left the household of 46 Lower Belgrave Street shattered. Sandra Rivet, the children's nanny, was found fatally injured in the basement. Lady Lucan, Veronica, was injured in the sitting room. The children were unharmed. Personal items remained in the house. Handbags, keys, the ordinary things of everyday life left undisturbed. Cut to slow, intimate shots. A child's toy on a rug, an unemptied teacup, a coat on a peg. No graphic detail, dignity for the victim. Lady Lucan told police that she had been assaulted by an intruder and that she fired a shot at the attacker, who then fled. Within hours, suspicions settled on the missing husband. Lucan was nowhere to be found. If he left, why his car at the port? If he fled, where would a hunted aristocrat go? Car at the ferry, blood on the seats. Later that day, Lucan's car, a distinctive blue 1972 Ford Corsair, was found abandoned near Newhaven, on the south coast. The vehicle reportedly contained traces of blood and mud. It was parked within reach of the ferry terminal. The obvious conclusion for many: he had fled Britain by sea. The first thread of the disappearing act had been pulled. Map animation showing London to Newhaven, then across the channel. Camera lingers on a lone car on a foggy quay. But every neat image invites a counter-image. How would a once public aristocrat vanish without a trace? Who would help him? And if he had left, why leave so few clues and so many questions? The investigation. Scotland Yard moves in. Scotland Yard opened a high-profile investigation. Witnesses were interviewed. A house was combed for evidence. Lady Lucan identified her attacker as her husband, and the press, smelling scandal, followed every development like hounds on a scent. Detectives pacing a drawing room, pages stamped evidence, a corkboard with photos and dates, but the case immediately splintered. Lucan's friends insisted he'd fled for a simple reason: fear, shame. A man who thought the law would not treat a titled gentleman kindly. Some argued for a premeditated escape. Others suspected something less tidy. that an accidental death had been covered up or that darker networks may have intervened. The first twist: an allegation, not a conviction. The most important fact to keep near is legal caution. Lucan was suspected and widely accused in the court of public opinion, but he was never convicted. He vanished before charges could bring him to trial. In the decades since, his name has alternately signaled villainy, victimhood, and myth. That ambiguity is where the case's power lives. Without a body and without a trial, rumor and imagination rush to fill the blank space. Sightings and the geography of escape. From the mid-1970s onward, the world became a stage for sightings. Reports placed Lucan in France, in South Africa, in the Australian outback, even in South America. Small-time hustlers claimed to have seen him in bars. Elderly ex-servicemen claimed to have been the ones who ferried him abroad. Clippings of world maps with pins and red thread, vintage passport stamps, blurred crowd footage. Every sighting produced hope, and then the sober ritual of verification. Photographs were grainy, alibis were thin, and the trail grew cold. Or did it? Each reported sighting added a color to the portrait. A man on the lam, a man living quietly in exile, or a corpse burned and buried in a place no one thought to look. Theories that refused to die. Over 40 years of speculation coalesced into a handful of competing narratives. They're worth laying out, because the differences in these stories tell you how people make sense of absence. 1. Suicide or accidental death. The idea here is simple. Lucan, faced with scandal and the prospect of arrest, took his own life or died trying to escape, perhaps by drowning after leaving his car at Newhaven. The absence of a body could be explained by tides and time. 2. Successful flight and new identity. Lucan boarded a ferry, hid in plain sight, and eventually slipped out of Europe to start again somewhere far from British tabloids. Supporters of this theory point to the classic aristocratic networks: friends, former military colleagues, and colonial ties that could smooth an exit. 3. A vendetta or cover-up. The darkest accounts argue that Lucan was helped to disappear by others, or that someone else orchestrated the violence in the house and used Lucan's absence as an opportunity to vanish him into myth. Each theory satisfies a different hunger: closure by death, the romance of exile, or the conspiracy of collusion. None of them are proven. A twist from the past, legal endings and living myths. Time, too, reshapes closure. In the absence of the man himself, the law eventually took its own steps. Years later, Lucan was declared legally dead so that estates could be settled and titles could pass. That legal conclusion did not solve the mystery. It only allowed life to move forward around the hole his disappearance left. Court corridors, a stamped document, a portrait with a black ribbon. But declarations in courtrooms do not feed the mind's hunger for the scene's visual truth. People still want a photograph, a grave, a confession. The most compelling twist: two endings we keep repeating. When a story survives decades, it tends to split into two endings that fans and family alike retell at kitchen tables and on late-night forums. 1. The tragic end. He drowned or died soon after the attack. Tides and time erased physical proof. This ending brings an uneasy peace. The man responsible cannot be punished, but the story has a finality. 2. The great escape. He escaped to a quiet life under another name, perhaps never fully at ease. This ending fuels the imagination, the aristocrat in exile, the hunted man who watches his children grow up from a distance. Both endings are plausible to different people. One comforts, one infuriates. Both keep the story alive. Why the Lucan case still holds us. The Lord Lucan story taps communal myths. Nobility above the law, the collapse of privilege, and the idea that scandal can make ghosts. It's also a case study in how the media, class divisions, and public appetite for drama shape justice. Editorial cartoons from the era, a crowded press conference, a family portrait left half empty. But at its core, the case is about real people. The nanny who died, Lady Lucan who bore the claim, and children who lost a father one way or another. The fascination with the vanished man should never drown the gravity of those losses. An invitation and a caution. The files remain in archives. The rumor mill keeps turning. Sightings still surface from time to time, fresh red threads on old maps. The truth might be a simple fact lost to tide or a complex network of choices that left no trail. Or sometimes the truth is stubbornly boring. A man who walked off and kept walking. A shoreline at dawn. A single shoe half buried in sand. The tide leaving and returning. If you've seen a face in a photo you can't forget, or heard a story from an old seaman, tell someone who can check it. But remember, speculation can wound as much as silence. If you enjoyed this faceless deep dive, subscribe for more cases told with care. Comment with your theory, keep it respectful. If you have credible information about historical crimes, contact the appropriate authorities.